everyone, and welcome to another Scots Way Hey podcast. And I'm joined today by musician Pedro Cameron, otherwise known as Man of the Minch, and poet Peter Mackay, who have collaborated on the project Strathclyde Nostraja, known in English as Street Sparks. But first of all, hello and welcome to both of you.
Hello.
I'm so pleased to have you both join us. So begin by talking about the project. How did it come about and what's the themes behind it?
Do you want to take that, Peter?
And I'll take that. So the project was actually a commission. It was the idea of a group in Glasgow, Ceollas Crack, who support Gaelic culture in Glasgow, who are starting this 5-year project trying to create, in their own words, an urban Gaelic songbook. And they thought urban and Gaelic, and they thought obviously me from the Isle of Lewis. And the idea behind it is to match up Gaelic poets with songwriters. Whether they have Gaelic or not, I think might change over the coming years. But they put me together with this fantastic singer, Pedro Cameron, and left it more or less up to us to come up with 5 songs, to sit down, talk about what our shared interests were, the kinds of things we might actually be able to say together. And it's really weird to be writing in this joint way, and especially for me, putting things into Pedro's mouth, and then having this dialogue to come up with some fantastic tracks that are 85 to 99% Pedro's work.
I wouldn't say that.
Pedro, is that a fair shot?
No, I would not say that at all. When I came into the project, my Gaelic was very like beginner's Gaelic. And I knew a few phrases here and there, but so me and Peter worked together a lot on basically just on pronunciation and sort of the rhythm of it. And yeah, it was quite a learning experience for me. And it was a good way to learn, like a really great way to learn, actually. I think that sort of creativity is such a good tool for learning. And likewise, creativity feeds off of like new experiences and new knowledge. So it kind of was quite a symbiotic kind of relationship, and yeah, it was really good. But yeah, the lyrical content is all Peter. But I put it to music, so I had to sort of learn it and learn the rhythm of it, and then try and put it into my kind of style of music. I think that was something we wanted to do, was while I'm a like a folk musician, I suppose, of sorts, we wanted it to sound modern and kind of poppy and sort of have a sort of a fresh kind of sound to it that to an old sort of language, you know.
And can I just say that coming into it with not that much Gaelic, with a little bit, Pedro's pronunciation is fantastic. The amount of work that he put into it to get the sounds right is hugely impressive.
And so much in there fascinates me, particularly the idea of learning a language alongside music. I mean, that does sound like a really interesting way of doing it, and perhaps a really helpful way of doing it. I mean, Peter, what was your experience of that with kind of teaching someone, but then there's the musical side of things as well?
Well, there's a couple of things there. I just thinking in those terms, I learned Spanish largely through reading poetry back in the day, and I just sit with the poems of Pablo Neruda and go through them syllable by syllable and get the sounds right. And I hadn't actually considered that as a parallel process to partly what myself and Pedro were doing, working on a sound by sound basis. And though I've played instruments in the past, I'm nowhere near the level of musician that Pedro is. And so for me, the instant side of it was almost having that musical education, seeing the different drafts go and seeing how the different tunes would change. And then almost the very granular, can we have this vowel sound here, or do we need a different vowel sound to make the rhythm of the song work? and the back and forth with the different types of phrasing we can have, the different stress we could have, where it has to be short, where it has to be long. I learned a hell of a lot about the music while Pedro was learning bits of the language.
And that kind of back and forth, Pedro, for you, did the music change as you started to learn the language? Because you both spoke about the rhythms, and of course the rhythm of languages is important in song and in poetry. Did you find that that was changing as you went?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as I got more of a hang of like how the words were meant to sound and more of an understanding of it, I think it definitely got more, like the songwriting became more complex. I think if you listen to the EP, it's not in order of when we wrote it, but so the first song that we wrote together was Drochich, which is quite a kind of straightforward 4/4 sort of indie pop song. But then the final one that we did was quite wordy and sort of long looping melodies and sort of maybe less repetitive and maybe so I think there was definitely, as we went on, it probably became more, it just, yeah, we were able to expand our kind of horizons more and sort of try different things. And yeah, I think that's kind of and I think that's a natural process anyway from for songwriting, is that you start off, and particularly co-writes, in my experience, is like you start off and you come up with something quite quite straightforward or quite simple, and the more that you kind of get to know each other, and the more that you sort of, yeah, the more that you build a relationship, I think that the songwriting follows suit, I would say.
And does that also go for understanding the language more as you learn more as well? Was that the case? Or did you always have a translation kind of to work for? Did you know the songs kind of from the beginning?
I knew what basically the way that it worked is that we did it a lot over, I mean, we only met for the first time in real life when we filmed the live session and recorded it. So we did it all, we had a few Zoom calls, but most of it was voice notes on WhatsApp, just back and forward. Me tearing my hair out sometimes trying to get it to work. It was I think I think it was quite an interesting experience, but I'm not sure about the understanding, because I think it's like Peter is a poet, and some of the language is actually quite complex. It's not the words that you would learn when you were learning Gaelic for the first time. It's not like, you know, I'm going to the shops and hello and it's raining and good morning. It was sort of like the sort of your bite on my shoulder like foxgloves or something like that. So it was I don't know if like the conversational Gaelic came out of it so much, but I think what did come out of it was like a real understanding of like how it's formed. And I feel like now whenever I read something that's in Gaelic, I know now immediately like how you would say that. But I don't necessarily know what it means. But that's coming, and like I'm still doing quite a lot of sort of reading myself and listening and trying to keep up that kind of learning, but I'm not really at a conversational kind of level yet. But I know lots of sort of words that don't necessarily all go together just yet.
You could read the poetry, but you maybe couldn't order a beer, that kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah.
I remember quite often when I learned languages, I'd use the Asterix books. And so you'd know the word for wild boar in about 15 languages, but very little else.
Yeah.
Well, you both mentioned about tradition, and you've got, you know, obviously folk music has a long tradition, and Gaelic poetry also has a kind of long tradition. So this idea of bringing it not just up to date, but putting it in a kind of urban setting. I mean, how did you approach that, Peter? First from yourself.
Well, a couple of different ways. I think one of the reasons that I was asked to be involved is that back at the time in the Commonwealth Games, I wrote 2 raps in Gaelic, which were part of a show that was put on at the time. And so they might have thought I was edgier than I actually am in reality because of that. But I think one of the questions I had was, A, how do you acknowledge the full history of Gaels coming down to the cities, coming down to Glasgow and Edinburgh, having this parallel, perhaps nostalgic view of the Highlands, but also perhaps a sense of escape, a sense of liberation, a sense of freedom, and this historic relationship between Scottish cities and the countryside. And then this other sense, well, we've got Gaelic communities who have always lived in Glasgow, Edinburgh, who were born there, who are city dwellers, and you've got this urban Gaelic. And would they be using language in different ways? Would they have a different sense of being in the city? And so something like the poem, the song Drochage, is partly about being 17 and coming to the city for the first time and having this great sense of release, of possibility, of freedom. Other of the songs make use of riffs or motifs from Gaelic tradition, from Gaelic tales, from other Gaelic songs, and they're sadder. You've got the sense of the experience in the city is one of poverty, deprivation, of an incredibly difficult life that you have to leave for somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so tonally, we were trying to do 2 or 3 different things, but then also reflect the diversity of the contemporary world.
Yeah. And Pedro, with the music, I mean, for people who don't know, Man of the Minch, it is a folk tradition, but it's one that you've brought right up to date, not just with your own music, but in the way that you've previously collaborated with other people. So it really does feel like a great fit, the 2 of you together. How did you approach the musical side of things?
To be honest, I think I just approached it in the same way that I would write any song. And I just wanted to, I think my music is very much like a melting pot of all the different kinds of music that I love. And I'm as much as a like Scottish trad fan as I am like country or electronica, sort of synth pop, like all these kinds of things. And so I didn't really approach it any differently. I think, yeah, I think it was enough, to be honest, to not try and be too sonically different to what I would normally do. And I kind of thought that was the point of the project. It was kind of to bring what I do to Peter's work and to Gaelic. And so I think that I kind of tried to, yeah, I just kind of to put my stamp on it. But we did talk about something that I deal with a lot in my music career in various forms is about queerness and about sort of LGBT plus narratives. So I really wanted to talk about that. So we did like one of the songs, Scaralister, is it's kind of based around the AIDS crisis in the 80s and 90s. And so, yeah, and Madame McGregor talks about someone, a woman that's sort of dressing in men's clothes. And so we wanted to bring those kind of narratives, or I was really keen to bring those kind of narratives into the songs and into the lyrics of the songs. So, yeah, I think that was kind of where I came at it from.
Can I just come in there as well? Because we were absolutely in agreement about this. I'd done quite a bit of work on the AIDS crisis before and working towards radio and TV and documentaries, and had spoken to lots of people who had lived through the period and were still had remarkable tales to tell or remarkable memories to share. Some of the other things, the Madame McGregor, there was a little bit of research there, reading a book on the history of Calton Jail and how one of the women who was in Calton Jail in the 19th century was there for impersonating a man. And so it's also having this historical depth of queerness as well was really important to show that there are these
Absolutely.
long roots. There's these different stories that we can be telling about the past as well as about the present.
So although it's concentrating perhaps on the contemporary, there's still a kind of look at the history there as well.
Yeah,
That's really interesting. How long has this project been going on? Because it sounds like one that would need time to kind of to come together.
we did it in 5 months. We started in January, recorded it in May. I was very stressed for 5 months. It was like I had such a great time doing the project. It was like really amazing, but I think I definitely felt a pressure to get it right, and we only had a sort of quite a limited amount of time to film it. We only kind of had one shot at that really, with a few takes, and so I was really keen to sort of make sure that I respected the language and that I was getting it right as a learner. And as a language. So I think, but yeah, we, to be honest, I think like the process of writing it and came quite easily to us, really, didn't it? We kind of.
I think one of the strange things is that it might have been, is one of these projects that might have been helped by the lockdown conditions.
Yeah.
By the fact that there was some pandemic going on, that you could be so concentrated on a project without that many distractions. And in some ways it was really helpful and healthy at the the height of the second wave, the depths of a Scottish winter, having the ability to speak to somebody as talented as Pedro, to be honest, and who has all of this energy and was willing to commit their time and their skills to this. That was a great way to spend time when you might otherwise be worrying about the end of humanity, the everything that was going on around us.
Absolutely, yeah. That it was definitely. I've been really lucky through the whole pandemic to have projects to focus on, and I really think I would have gone mad if I didn't have things to devote all my energy to when I wasn't when I wasn't working or whatever. So it's that was definitely, we were able to. It was quite intensive, and maybe more intensive, as you say, than it would have been had I been out on touring or playing gigs or doing other sort of projects or musical projects. So while it was like a short space of time, it felt like no time, and it felt like forever. So, but it kind of it was really sort of, it really helped with the focus, as Peter says.
That's a great way of summing up, I think, the last year and a half. It felt like no time and it felt like forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's really interesting, because I've spoken to quite a few, mainly musicians, but also writers as well, who their art has really kind of got them through these difficult times, pouring things into, whether it be music or whether it be writing. And it's clearly something I think both of you have felt.
Yeah, for sure.
I think one of the strange things for me was the project before this, the lockdown project before this, was a book called 100 Favorite Gaelic Poems, which meant I had to translate about 60 to 70 Gaelic poems from throughout history, many of them about, leaving Scotland, going overseas, knowing that you might never see your family again, knowing that you might never see your home, wherever that is again, and the sense of dislocation. And that was great to do, but also it hit in the wrong place. It hit in the gut when you're stuck at home, going, well, when are you going to see loved ones? When are you going to see these places again? And I had a greater understanding of the immigrant experience, say, or that sense of loss. This was a bit more uplifting. So it was good they came in that order.
I mean, that's one thing I was wondering about in terms of writing in Gaelic in this kind of urban setting, for want of a better word. Do you view it as a battle, a celebration, a kind of, just the right for the culture to exist? How did you kind of approach those aspects of it?
There's quite a lot of defiance in some of the songs, and I think there is a battle there. I live in Edinburgh. In Glasgow, there's a bit more of a sense of Glasgow having a place, but
Yeah.
even there, it's a defiant place.
Yes.
I used to live in Dublin, and even Dublin, which is not a Gaelic city,
Mm.
has more acknowledgement of the language. And so I think it's something that it was important to not be too comfortable with.
Yeah.
Edinburgh in the Gaelic imagination tends to mean the Calton prison. It tends to mean somewhere that you're going to end up incarcerated. It's somewhere that you get tricked or deceived. And I think trying to keep that sense of edge, that sense of danger, was part of what I wanted to do anyway.
And in terms of where you go next with the project, are there going to be hopefully other live performances? Is it something that has got a life beyond the initial recording?
I'd really love it to. I'd love there to be. There's not a huge amount of plans. We'll kind of see where it goes. I don't know if this will be out probably after it's released on to download, because at the moment what's available is the film that was made, that Keola's Crack made, and so yeah, we're now releasing it as a live EP, and hopefully that'll kind of keep it spreading, and maybe in a bit more of a sort of manageable way, I suppose, or in so yeah, I would love to keep playing. The musicians I got to play with, it was just amazing. So we had Charlotte Printer, who's in Apache Darling and Skippinish, and loads of really good bands, amazing bass player and guitar player. Audrey Tate played on it. She plays with Broken Chanter, her own band, Girl Who Cried Wolf. Yep. And then we had Josie Duncan, who's an amazing Gaelic singer, like probably one of the best Gaelic singers in the country. So she was a really like great help to me and about framing it in song and sort of how to sing it, as opposed to how to say it. She was really good help with that. And we had Laura Wilkie as well on fiddle. So we had such an amazing time, the five of us, performing the music, and I think we'd all love to keep playing it as much as we can. Obviously, I've got other projects coming up very soon as well, so it's just kind of fitting it in amongst that, and as well. So and they're all sort of very in-demand musicians. That's something that another great thing about lockdown has been, or a sort of a silver lining of lockdown, I suppose, is that I've been able to perform and play and collaborate with people that I maybe wouldn't have normally got the chance to, because they'd either be too busy or they'd be on tour or whatever. And it was actually quite easy to form my dream band out of sort of Scotland's indie folk scene for the purposes of recording it. But they really made it so easy. They're just like four of the nicest people in music, I think, in Scotland. So that was really great. And yeah, I kind of wanted to, with them, quite often with Gaelic singers, it's a female singer with an all male band, and I wanted to kind of try and flip that on its head a wee bit as well. So it was nice to be able to do that as well. I think they're all amazing musicians, so it was kind of a bit of a dream come true, really.
We should really make it clear where people can find the recordings and when the EP will be available and things like that. So can you give some information?
Yeah, so it's coming out through a new label called the Bothy Society, who I'll also be releasing my my album with after that. But yeah, it'll be on all the normal channels, Spotify, Apple Music, all that sort of thing, and downloadable from Bandcamp. But you can also watch the film. Yeah. Hamish McLeod, who's an amazing filmmaker, made this. We filmed it in Govan Shed, which is this massive cavernous warehouse in Govan in Glasgow, and so there's a film of that. which can be found on Keola's Crack's Facebook page and also on YouTube. And also we're releasing the videos gradually as individual videos as well. But basically you can find it wherever wherever you get your music from, basically.
Yeah, if you Google it and search, you're going to be able to find it. And is this the kind of project you might think about doing something similar again, or is it kind of you know, doing it over such a short period? Has it been too stressful?
It's the kind of thing I'd happily do again. It's to be honest, one of the strange things about especially writing poetry, it is quite a solitary craft.
Yeah.
And so always being able to work with musicians is great, partly because you see this response back and forth. And I've got at least one other song that somebody's asked me to write after this as well. So I know that these will be happening. So it was a huge amount of fun. I think there was a lot more pressure on Pedro than there was on me as well, because of the linguistic conditions. But
I mean, I loved it. It was really a lot of fun. It was like challenging, but in a good way. I like to be challenged. So yeah, I would love to do something like it again. I know that Keola's Crack are going to continue with the project, I believe, and I think it's a 5-year project. So I think next time it will be another Gaelic poet and another musician. So,
and both Keola's Crack and the Bothy Society were kind of new to me, certainly, but they seem to be doing some important work, I think.
Keola's Crack have a really interesting way of bringing Gaelic culture and other musical traditions together. So the last thing I did for them was with the Glasgow Improvisers Orchestra, which was a huge amount of fun, partly just to have these soundscapes created around your work. But it is based out of the CCA in Glasgow. Back when we have live gigs, they have regular live gigs that you should go and listen to, because you never know quite what you're going to hear. It's one of these wonderful, again, it's a melting pot of different styles, different ideas, always a surprise.
Oh, excellent. I must check them out. That sounds great. And I had a look at, you know, the Bothy Society. Pedro seemed to be doing quite a lot of excellent music coming out with them.
Yeah, so basically their MO is to, what they want to do is sort of that neo-trad thing, as it's called. So it's sort of progressive traditional music, I suppose. So yeah, they're working with myself. They are also working with a band called Heisk, who are an amazing all-girl sort of funky sort of calypso elements and jazzy elements to traditional music. And they're also working with White, who are a really good
we've had White on the podcast,
sort of soundscapey, yeah, amazing. And yeah, so I think what they're trying to do is promote new traditional music or progressive traditional music through mainstream channels. So yeah, so they're a management company and a sort of PR company, but and they are also now a label, so I'll be their first couple of releases. So yeah, there's a lot of good music coming out of from them. And
with things opening up and all of that, is there plans for either of you to do something new after having done this, aside from your new album, Pedro?
Well, I think that's going to be.
Sounds like you're busy enough, maybe to.
It's going to be taking up most of my time for just now. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting out playing again. I've got a few gigs, socially distanced gigs booked and stuff as things open up. So yeah,
excellent. I'm really looking forward to seeing you play live again, I have to say. And Peter, yourself, have you got anything new lined up?
I'd like to just speak to some people, not in a square box. That'll be a nice start.
Yeah.
There's a book I'm co-editing that's coming out, and it's going to have an event at the book festival.
Yes.
I'm doing some translations for Macedonian poetry, which, if this all ends before September, I would get to go to Skopje, but I don't think that's going to happen. So it's just more or less to see what's available in the next few months.
Well, it's been such a pleasure chatting to both of you. It really has, and I can't wait for other people to hear what you've been working on, because it's great.
Thanks very much for having us, Alistair.
Thanks so much, Alistair. This was great.
No problem at all. And we'll be back soon with someone completely different. Cheers. And thanks once again to Pedro and Peter for being such excellent and interesting podcast guests. But we thought we can't let you go without giving you an example of their music. So, from Strathagan na Stradga, this is Drochid. Silly, yes.